And a happy new year it is indeed for NC State. Quarterback CJ Bailey has announced he will return for the Wolfpack in 2026.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. Our Friday show is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off this Friday evening, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, only on FanDuel. Happy Friday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton is back in the saddle with me. The year is now 2026, and NC State has their trigger man returning to the squad for the upcoming football season. Quarterback CJ Bailey announced on his own Instagram account that he will be running it back with the Pack. Kenton, how big of a deal is this for NC State to get this done, especially with the portal now open for business?
It's a massive deal. It's a massive deal to get this done for all parties involved, because you look around the college landscape and, I was having some conversations with some folks who are pretty high up in different programs around the country recently, because for those of you who don't know, I went home for Christmas, and that's Detroit, Michigan for me. And I talked to some folks at some different programs, and I thought, let me get the perspective of some much bigger, much more well-funded programs. And they're like, what you're seeing with CJ Bailey is the reality for all of us. Yep. All of us don't know. For example, there's a lot of questioning going on right now with Bryce Underwood up in Michigan, and you can't break off a bigger check. You cannot. That just is not what has been the norm in college than what he's received straight out of the gates. And yet there's questions about, there's coaching instability and all these things, even though they now have a head coach. What's going on and what's going to happen there. So I say all that to say, to bring this back to NC State, us being excited about CJ coming back is not oh my God, you're making much ado about nothing. In today's landscape, players leave for any reason. Sometimes it appears to not have a rhythm and rhyme. Sometimes the rhythm and rhyme don't make sense to the average person. But players can leave for any reason at any time these days. And so to retain a talent like CJ Bailey, and for reference, for those of you who are like, he only played well against bad teams, whatever the case may be, here's some stats for you in terms of how he stacks up against other quarterbacks in the ACC. Only one quarterback in the ACC threw for more touchdowns and less interceptions than him. That was Darian Mensah, who we know is a multi-million-dollar man. In terms of yards, he was number 5 in the conference. And then, again, if you go above him and say, who had more yards than him, you're looking at, again, a bunch of players with more turnovers and Darian Mensah. That's it. So ultimately, this is a great situation for NC State to get a talent that's good as CJ Bailey back. And it's also a great time for CJ Bailey, because he doesn't have to go from number 1 here to searching for a place where he could potentially be number 1. And then while you're potentially number 1, you may make more, but you might also lose that quarterback battle, and now you're going to have to transfer again because you've lost the quarterback battle elsewhere. It's just a situation where you get the continuity in your play calling, you get the continuity in your environment, what the lay of the land is and all those things. So again, this is a deal that I think works out great for everybody. I think everybody comes out a winner here with CJ Bailey staying put at NC State.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we harped so much about it these last couple weeks. This made the most sense for both NC State and for CJ Bailey. Of course, CJ threw for over 3,000 yards this season. That's the first time an NC State quarterback has done that since Devin Leary in 2021. I believe CJ is also top 10 in the program for quarterback passing efficiency as well. He had a great season this season, even though we're 7-5 as a record, but 3,100 passing yards, 68% completion. He did have 25 passing touchdowns, added 6 more using his legs on the ground. He was a solid presence there for the offensive front. And we talked about the grand scheme of things, the big picture of this offseason for NC State. He was going to be the anchor point. You could see, players leaving off the defense because of how important CJ Bailey is to this team. His leadership, his talent, of course, leading this team, through thick and thin. This was the most important thing for NC State to get done. And now, like I said, the portal is officially open for business because today is Friday. If I was NC State, I wanted to have an answer by today or hopefully sooner, because the longer this thing goes on, the bad advice gets flying left and right. You never wanted that to be the situation, especially too for NC State. Like, if there is a chance that CJ is going to leave, give NC State a chance to try and get our ducks in a row and figure out what our game plan would be there on out. So it's so crucial to get CJ back now. I'd imagine the second order of business is going to be fortifying the lines, both offensively and defensively. If you can build a trench around CJ Bailey, the rest will come. Because the other talent guys that you still have here, a la a Teddy Hoffman, a la a healthy version of Jonathan Paylor, Duke Scott there in the backfield, you have pieces you can already build upon before you even get into the portal. So CJ was vitally important for this team to return him in 2026 and to officially now get confirmation of that before the portal really gets out of hand here. You cannot say enough about how important that truly is. And something else, too, you want to talk about the continuity, like Kenton mentioned there. We're now returning CJ Bailey for his third season at NC State. That's the first time we've had a 3-year quarterback since I would technically count Devin Leary. Began the 2020 season with COVID, but then broke his ankle. Then, of course, we had him for 21 and 22 before he got hurt again. But, going back even further, Ryan Finley was the last time we had a confirmed 3-year starter, and we saw how great he was for us back then. The continuity, especially with the OC now, who's Kurt Roper, who grew CJ as a quarterback coach now 2 years ago. I can't believe how long it's already been. Keeping these guys together, building that chemistry, another year in the system in the offseason, growing together, gelling together, learning how to play for one another. You cannot put a price tag on that, pun intended. So it's so exciting to see CJ return. He seems to be pretty fired up about it, posting it everywhere he possibly can. We talked about the preliminary thoughts about the 2026 schedule as well. And I think now that you do have your trigger man back, I'm telling you, those expectations, they're going to be there. I think you're gearing up for another a swing year for NC State. They're going to try and take a swing at this thing, gunning for Charlotte, gunning for an ACC championship. That is what you're gearing up now for with the confirmation of CJ Bailey. So vitally crucial. We really can't put into words how much this really does mean for NC State. I guess now, because we don't know the numbers of this whole ordeal, you hope NC State didn't completely break the bank, but at the same time, CJ does have that much value to this team. So now it's time to fortify everywhere else. Get him a team that he can win with. We'll build on the defense as well. We'll take another swing at this thing in 2026.
I'm going to tell you this, okay? I'm not going to spill any details on who's making what or whatever the things may be, but there's money available. There were guys that were, and this is the word is coming down from folks very high up in the program. There were guys making 6 figures that did not play a snap last year. No injuries, they just did not crack the 2 deep that were making 6 figures last year. And I'm not going to say any names about that, but a lot of that has been freed up. And so, it's not so much a situation of, do we have the money? It's a situation of, are we allocating the money properly?
Correct.
Because you don't have the exact budget of some of these other schools. So yes, to an extent, it's do you have the money, but more importantly than the do you have the money, because I think we're closer to some of those schools than we'd realize. It's the allocation. It's the allocation that needs some addressing. And you just can't see a lot of way. And this is not me saying that NC State was wasteful last year. I'm just telling you what I know. That there were, from sources I trust, there were folks that were making a pretty penny that were not making pretty plays. So ultimately this year, there needs to be a little bit more discretion on the spending to, get the proper players paid as they need to be, whether it be retaining guys or in the portal. And some guys, you got to say, hey, man, good riddance. At that price point, it ain't going to make sense. We can't work it out, and that's fine.
Yeah, so certainly have to feel like this feels like a gigantic breath of fresh air for all parties involved. And now, like I said, you get aggressive, you go in that portal and you start building a team that is conducive to maybe 9, 10, maybe plus wins in 2026, because I do believe the schedule opportunity, it will be there. So NC State quarterback CJ Bailey will return in 2026. Cannot say enough how important that is for the Wolfpack and what they hope to be a banner year. Coming up next, we're going to give our continued thoughts on the post-game presser from Will Wade. I only saw a little bit of it when I spoke about it on Wednesday. Now we got Kenton in the house. Let's dive in a little bit deeper. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Friday sponsor is Rugiet. Let's talk about something that most men, they don't really want to bring it up, but they absolutely should. Stress from work or money or life, sometimes it just doesn't switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. The science behind Rugiet Ready stands out. It's 3 clinically proven ingredients in one formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. You can connect with a board-certified doctor online, and everything you order will ship discreetly to the comfort of your front door. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, well, now's the time. Head on over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. That's Rugiet, Rugiet, Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for 15% off of your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Middle portion of our Friday show, wanted to give some continued thoughts on the Will Wade post-game presser from Wednesday that made it all the way up to ESPN and Sports Center with the emotion he put on display. As I was giving the post-game recap on Wednesday, Will Wade was in the middle of that, so I didn't get to see the whole entire thing. Of course, now we have Kenton back in the house, and people wanted to hear his thoughts on the matter as well. Will Wade fiercely defended the play of Darian Williams in the postgame, saying that he's playing well, he's impacting winning in other ways than just scoring, and he's tired of people picking on him in the media. He wants this guy to stay confident, stay ready for the team, and he's impacting NC State winning basketball games. He really harped on that, said a couple of magic words that obviously we cannot repeat on here. But Kenton, now that both of us have seen the entirety of the interview, what were your thoughts on the emotion from Will Wade?
I mean, I'll say this. First of all, the question was not a ridiculous question to ask. It was a very fair question to ask. And beyond that, Will Wade sure can lay it on thick sometimes when he wants.
Yes, sir.
Can he? I mean, let's be honest. Yes, if we're talking about against Wake Forest, that was one of his better performances in terms of bringing all the other things, right? You're looking at 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, 1 steal, no turnovers. That's a heck of a stat line. We have seen games like that from Darian Williams where he does give you a ton in other ways. But then you've also got a game like Auburn where you're looking at 2 rebounds, 3 assists, no blocks, no steals, 2 turnovers. And you're going to tell me that that's good enough because he put up 11 points with it? That's the type of game that you pay a guy like that to show up for. And so when he's going to be criticized, if he has a game like that, it makes sense for him to be criticized for that. And now, back to the Will Wade aspect of it, I love that he's defending his guys.
Yeah.
I love that you've got to know what every guy needs. Some guys need to hear you go into a press conference and say, you ain't tough. He ain't tough. He ain't a tough guy. That's not who he is. Some guys need that pat on the back of, he's going to be fine. He's going to be all right. Y'all don't see how he works. Y'all don't see what he does. Everybody needs different, there's no cookie cutter approach to every player needs the exact same thing at all times. That's just not how it works. And so with that in mind, if he understands this is what's going to get big fella rolling, this is what's going to get him feeling good and give him the warm and fuzzies to be his best self, I'm completely fine with it. And this is part of the Will Wade experience. He's going to give you very big emotions on questions that seem very mundane, very run-of-the-mill, very inconsequential. But when he feels like he has the opportunity, when you give Will Wade the opportunity to kind of get something off his chest that he's been dying to say, he's going to say it. He's going to say it. And so this is our coach. This is our guy. I'm not surprised by this reaction at all from Will Wade because if you know anything about Will Wade, this is just who he is. I'm not saying that he was wrong for it, and also the reporter wasn't wrong for asking the question. This is a moment where a lot of people outside of Raleigh, just like with the we've got a great GPA, we've got nice guys. If you want to look at it wrong, you're going to look at it wrong. If you want to see Will Wade as some villain, you're going to see him as the villain. But if you look at this from the outside looking in, from an objective lens, he accomplished so much by way of just saying, you know what, my big fella's going to be all right. He's going to get back rolling. He's going to get back to where we need to be. The shots are going to start falling. But while the shots are not falling, he's affecting the game and winning positively, which has not always been the case for Darian Williams. But he's saying it to say this type of game, if you give us this, we'll be okay. And when the shots start falling with the other stuff, that's when the fireworks truly start. So, I look at it as a big old nothing burger, as, this is Will Wade being Will Wade, giving his guys confidence, giving the reporter a little bit of a temperature check, see what his post is like, and keeping it pushing.
Yeah, I think you laid that out perfectly. And I did find it very amusing that the temperature in the room was about a steady, like a 71, 72. It's comfortable. Then all of a sudden that question gets thrown across, and we're talking like 215 in the oven immediately. Like, it's almost like he was ready for that question to get asked so he could just blow up about it. Look, from a standpoint of being an athlete, and I don't want to speak for Kenton, but I imagine he'll agree with what I say here. If you're an athlete and you see your coach really ride for you that hard and defend you against any and all criticism, saying, that's our guy, we believe in him, and we're going to keep this thing rolling. As an athlete, that's going to make you want to play harder for that coach to try and prove him right. You want to support the rest of your team and say, look, I am supposed to be the guy. I am supposed to be Darian Williams. I am supposed to be the bus driver, and I got to figure this thing out because I have people depending on me. And I'd imagine that's the type of reaction you're going to get from Darian Williams. And Will Wade said the shoulder's fine. I guess we'll see how that progresses moving forward, but I think he is going to play really hard to try and prove his teammates, his coaching staff, and himself right here in the near future. So I have no problem with what Will Wade said because I want my coach to ride that hard for his team, his program, our fan base, all of it. You want that coach to step up and say, this is us. We're riding for us. We believe in us. I don't give a blank about what anyone else has to say about it. That's how you maintain a culture and a program moving forward. So I did find it also very amusing that the loudest complaints were those wearing light blue. Wonder why that might be. Yeah, because like Kenton said, if you're not an NC State fan, if you're not in Raleigh, and you haven't really been paying attention to NC State so far, you probably watched that video and you're like, why is he being an a-hole? Like, what was wrong with the question? The question in itself was fine. So I agree on that point. But again, if you're looking for reasons to hate Will Wade, you're going to find them. If you preconceive that he is a hard-nosed blank, then yeah, you're probably like, oh, well, that's par for the course for Will Wade. But it's not that. You have to understand the context of this entire situation. He's trying to motivate his guy. He's trying to back his guy in the media, and he's trying to keep this train rolling. So again, no problem at all with what he said. In fact, I loved what he said. I want that emotion because like I said before, we've waited decades for a coach like this. I've wanted my NC State coaches to be fiery in the media, to be fiery in backing their teammates, and be fiery in backing NC State. It matters to me. So I loved seeing Will Wade get fired up. That right there, that is elite leadership. And you either know or you don't know. This is an if you know situation. So that is all that really needs to be said for right there. I loved what he said. No problem with what he said. That is what I want from my basketball coach. That is how this program will be run moving forward. Elite belief in each other and their team goals. That's where they're headed moving forward. So again, good win against Wake Forest. They have another ACC matchup, an 11 a.m. tip-off for some reason in the Lenovo Center on Saturday morning. Virginia, who just lost a triple overtime game against the Hokies, they'll be looking to right the ship. But NC State, they got to keep this thing rolling. Looking to start 2-0 in the young ACC season. The first game of 2026 is Saturday at 11 a.m. Coming up next, we're going to round out our Friday show with Fan Friday, addressing our top comments of the week. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Friday sponsor is FanDuel, and Fridays already feel different during basketball season, but FanDuel is making them even more exciting. Every Friday night, which that is tonight, before the NBA games tip off, FanDuel's giving fans a new way to kick off your weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before tip-offs begin. All you have to do is open up the app during that happy hour window. That's between 6 and 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You'll receive boosts, bonuses, and sometimes other surprises. It's an easy way to check the weekly special before tip-off and make that move before that window closes. The timing is perfect. It's right before games, right before the weekend begins. It adds a little extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So, before tip-off, check the FanDuel app between 6 and 7:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Last couple minutes of our Friday show. Now time for Fan Friday, addressing our top comments of the week. Here we go. First one comes from T to the Rock. They say, while D. Will is important for the Pack to reach its ceiling, I think Matt Abel is also key. He has all the tools to be a real weapon as the season moves forward. So, Kenton, the reason I put this one in here, we had our preseason discussion about X Factor. Your X Factor actually was Matt Abel. Mine was Terrence Arsenault, but I want to double back. I think you might have hit the nail on the head. I do think Matt Abel is steadily, slowly becoming an X Factor possibility for Will Wade's group.
Not only is he becoming a possibility, I think that you can pretty much directly track a lot of what Matt Abel has done and who he has been on the season to how this team performs to a certain degree. You talk about affecting winning outside of scoring. Matt Abel is a guy that at 6'6", 205 pounds, you're looking at a guard that you're saying he's more of a two-guard / forward type deal. He's not really going to be a guy that you look at to do a ton in all these different ways. And then you look at the box sheet and you're like, oh, well, damn, maybe he can get it done in all these different ways. Maybe he can get it done on the boards. Maybe he can get it done through his passing. Maybe he can get it done through his scoring. He's a guy that ultimately, when you talk about unlocking the ceiling of this team, you need somebody to show up when D. Will is having a time like he is right now, where it's a bit of a struggle. And Quadir Copeland has been playing out of his mind to the point where I've raised my standard for what I expect of him. But who's to say that level is sustainable permanently? Who's to say that he doesn't have a game or two where that slips? And I hope he doesn't. And that's my deepest hope there. But you're going to need depth guys that can show up and get it done at a high level. When I watched Matt Abel coming out, I said, okay, he's got the goods. He's got the ability to be that. And he's shown it so far this year. So I'm very excited to see him grow and be the player that he is, that he has been so far.
It seems to me, and this is extremely common for all freshmen to get thrown into the fire immediately, but it seems that the game is steadily starting to slow down a little bit for him. And, again, 4-star, 5-star freshman, immediately getting a lot of playing time out of the gate. Everything's excitable. Everything's fast. They're trying to be their best. They're trying to learn on the fly, and it's not always an easy feat. But for Matt Abel, as we're getting into ACC play, he's averaging 8 points, 3 boards, an assist on 40% shooting overall, 32% from three. That's pretty damn solid. And again, he's only going to get better as the season progresses. And some of the pockets where he has been a microwave scorer, that does come in handy when Darian Williams has a little bit of a shooting slump, although he's doing other things very well still. Matt Abel is establishing himself as a key piece to a very steady incline of the production from this team. And you've also seen that Will Wade is slowly shortening his rotation, being that he's looking for about 7 to 8, sometimes 9, but usually about 7 to 8 guys that are a main fixture in this rotation. Matt Abel's one of them. So it's going to be vitally important that he stays on that plane, gets better and better and better, becomes a calming presence, much like Allen Breed has quickly become as well. Very impressed with Matt Abel so far. And again, the sky's the limit for a kid like this. Next one comes from Will Buckner. They say, if I was CJ, I'd tell the coaches to go get some monster OL. Don't worry about me. Get me some killer protection. Was that the issue at Miami and Notre Dame and others? ?
I would say yes. I would say, and the biggest thing that's happening right now, I look at what Miami is doing. Look at what Miami's doing. If anybody were to argue the top receiving rooms if anybody was to argue the top receiving rooms in CFP, do you think that Miami ends up in the top 3?
No, I don't think so.
If anybody was to argue the top defensive back rooms in the CFP, do you think Miami ends up in the top 3?
Probably not.
Okay. So we have established the guys furthest outside are not the areas where Miami exceeds and succeeds, and yet they're whooping the wheels off of opponents in the college football playoff. They beat Texas A&M in College Station. 100,000 fans cheering against you. They still got the job done. Miami scored more points against Ohio State than any other team this year has. No team has scored more points against Ohio State. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Kenton, that includes a pick six. No. Even if you take away the pick six, what's 24 minus 7, Grayson?
17.
Okay, and I want you to venture to guess what the high against Ohio State's defense was this year.
Trying to think of who it even was. It wasn't Texas. I don't know. Was it like 10, 13?
16 by Illinois.
Oh, damn.
So even if you strip away everything else and say just what they did by bludgeoning this team with a physical offensive line and a 220-pound back, even if you take away the pick six, you're still looking at more points than any other team put up. Because if you've got big men on both sides of the ball that can get the job done, you are going to put yourself in a position where you can compete. Now, obviously, freakazoids like Bane and Mesidor don't grow on trees. They're premium guys, and they're defensive linemen anyway. But it still sticks with the point that at the end of the day, he who has the best big men, as Nick Saban once said, mass kicks you know what.
When you watch back the tape from the Miami game and the game on the road at Notre Dame, I think the biggest thing that really pops off the page is NC State was not really able to force that much pressure on both CJ Carr and Carson Beck. But Notre Dame, they were in the backfield. Miami, they were in the backfield. So a lot of times you see these games where, on the highest level, Miami's winning the Cotton Bowl in front of 105,000 right after they just beat Texas A&M in front of 100,000. And what really jumped off the page, the pressure that they got on Julian Sayin, forcing mistakes, forcing bad throws, forcing the Ohio State offense to be completely out of sync when they probably have the best wide receiving room in the country. They virtually always do. But Miami's dominating at the point of contact right there in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Who thought that Mark Fletcher would really be able to get enough going on the ground against Ohio State, which has been one of the best defenses? Probably not many, but they did. Miami's offensive line did a spectacular job holding their own on Wednesday night, and the same goes for Notre Dame. They always have a spectacular offensive line. That's for a good reason. They know where the money must go for the team to succeed once they get in the postseason, but ironically, not this year. The premium that you can place on the offensive line and defensive line, it is for good reason. Trenches will win you championships in addition to solid defense. So, yeah, if I'm CJ Bailey, I do want to get that fortified. I need Spike Souls back. If you can get Jacarius Peak back, that feels like a massive bonus considering a lot of us thought he'd be in the league by now. If you can return him and then you get Teague Anderson back and maybe go in the portal and get some more depth there, you might be cooking there before you get into the portal and look for some defensive help. So, yeah, build up the line on both sides of the ball, and then we'll see what we got moving forward. And last one here comes from Wee Jones 426. Tangentially, that's a fun word for you here on Friday. Tangentially related to portal hopping, I've listened to Cam Newton and Tom Brady talk about how the NFL has had to dumb down offenses because players, which is quarterbacks, aren't staying at schools long enough to start learning advanced principles. They're transferring every year and having to learn the basics of a new system instead of progressing. Thoughts?
Well, the transferring is part of it, but there's also a lot going on in terms of at the lowest levels. When you're talking about from the time that these kids are starting to play football, everything is starting to be RPO at a level that I have not seen. I mean, they've got it going in high school now. At a level that's like, if you don't run it, you're darn near considered an archaic offense. Now, why is that important? Because when you do RPO, that de facto cuts down a lot of the thinking and a lot of the advanced principles. That's just the reality. You got, if you see this, you do this. If you go here, if they show you this look, you go here. And so it kind of takes away some of that thinking. And another part of it is defenses are just getting so much better at disguising what they're doing. Kirk Cousins talked about this as well, that it used to be all about pre-snap. You go up, see your look, see your read, know that this is going to be open, that's going to be open. But now there's so many different ways of doing this thing and so many different ways that teams are disguising coverages, even at the college level. It kind of causes for it to be a little bit more difficult to read these things out. But I will agree that this is part of it, right? Not knowing and learning from one consistent messenger over 3 to 4 years, that definitely takes an effect, especially when it's, well, hey, I just need you knowing enough and up to the standard of knowing our offense before we even get into the mechanics of your footwork, before we get into the mechanics of is that front toe always pointed at its target, before we get into the mechanics of your hip swing and rotation and all those things, just the part of do you know the playbook before we get into everything and in terms of the neck up and what you need to see pre-snap, post-snap and all that. It's very it doesn't make it easier. It doesn't make it better. So I will concede that point. I think it's a multi-layered thing because I think like almost any other problem in life, it's easy to point at one singular thing, but like most problems in life, it is it's a complex group of things working to create a specific outcome that has either been very good or very bad. In this case, very bad in terms of QB's understanding of high-level principles.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. There's certainly truth on both sides of this equation because, yes, I think the game is changing. I think it's become more mainstream, the evolution of a dual-threat quarterback much more than it was like even 4, 5, 6 years ago. Everywhere in the country, they're asking quarterbacks to do a lot more than just read a defense and deliver the throw. RPOs have been more popularized. But on the other side of that, consider a quarterback, and I won't name names, but just a uniform situation here. Imagine a quarterback transfers like twice and then gets drafted. So you're going to have 3 different years with 3 different coordinators, 3 different sets of offensive weapons, 3 different playbooks. There's only so much time you have to learn that much in each one of those 3. So there is an element to this that transferring is kind of slowing the development of many players. And that is certainly not limited to just the quarterback position either. Changing sceneries every year with different teammates, different offensive coordinators that run different offenses and like things done different ways. There is a real aspect to this where there's just so much information and so little time. And so I think it's rare, going all the way back to CJ Bailey, it's rare now that you see a guy, especially a quarterback, stay in one spot for 3 different years. Even the blue bloods of the sport are not really keeping a quarterback for more than like 2 years. And so what's cool to watch about CJ both this year and coming up next year is watching how he is growing as a quarterback. He is dual threat at times, but he's more a pocket passer than anything else. Watching him learn and then take command of the offense is not really something that you're seeing everywhere else. There's guys that are just brought in for 1 year and their objective is to win. However they can produce the best offense for 1 year is all they're being asked of. Then they get drafted in the NFL, and then all of a sudden it's like a different set of rules almost. So I certainly see a lot of truth to the effects of transferring, but at the same time, I also agree. I think the game is just changing before our eyes. That will do it for us here on Friday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We do have an 11 a.m. tip-off tomorrow on Saturday. NC State is hosting the UVA Cavaliers. We will have a live show for you following the conclusion of that game. So we will see you tomorrow on Saturday. So until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.